Back on Inside Tennessee with our panel, Susan Williams and Don Bosch and John North. We're going to look at public safety now and what the candidates who came in for mayor said about that issue. Let's listen.
And when you look at the way that the mayor went outside of the budget with the $43,000 to hire the chief of police, there's no really checks and balances. We need to figure out where all the money's going, and we need to get it under control. Right now, times are hard for a lot of people. We've got property taxes been raised twice, but yet she's run on the campaign that she's built 4,000 houses, and it should be generating a lot of property taxes.
Public safety is 42% of our budget, I do agree, but I would like to see a little bit more transparency on that. Is public safety, of course you already mentioned police, but I would like to see a breakdown of what we're giving to our fire department as well as our EMS and medical support staff. The other big thing that I want to point out is park and recreation. We know that youth enrichment is critical right now for our community. I know we're going to tap on this a little bit, but youth gun violence, especially when you think about youth outreach, youth enrichment, we need to see a greater increase in the park recreation category.
It's really important to listen to the people, and what I hear from the people is that they care first and foremost about public safety and housing. So our budget reflects that, and also essential services. So 2/3 of our budget is dedicated to the people who help provide those services, our police officers, our firefighters, our engineers and public service workers, and that's who keeps our city safe and keeps our city running, and it's important to pay them fairly, so we treat them right, and that means that they treat the people of our city well.
At the end of the day, safety is job one. We can do bike trails, we can have a lot of great urban amenities, but protecting your citizens is a key thing. And I've heard people describe law enforcement as protecting the law-abiding from those who are lawless, and I think in some ways the opposite is really true. It's the law enforcement who protects the lawless from what the law-abiding would do if we could get our hands on them.
All right, we're back with our panel. Their reaction to that. Don, let's start with you first.
Well, my first reaction is when you talk public safety is KPD. And if there's a chink in Mayor Kincannon's armor in her first term, was at least the perception of how KPD's been handled, the hiring of Chief Noel. I'm not suggesting that Chief Noel's a bad hire, but the process that was used, the fact that we are way understaffed at KPD, the fact that they're still underpaid, although obviously the county side's done better, the city side will do better. There is increases planned in the future. The problem is we talk about adding more money to it, we can't find the bodies to fill those jobs. And until that happens, and I don't think that happens just with more money. It happens with culture, it happens with attitude. It's poor at KPD right now. And it's difficult for law enforcement across America, and I live in this world, and so I think it's tough. I heard a variety of people, again, shifting focuses to other things on that question. That's what politicians do. We see it on this show often, but at the end of the day, we need to find a way to increase the effectiveness and the size and the ability of law enforcement, primarily KPD, to make the community a little bit safer.
Picking up on one point Don made about the chief, the candidates, as they came in to talk about police, did say they appreciate the efforts of the current chief. None of them said he's wrong. They may have had some concerns about the process, right, but they did not criticize his record in particular.
Actually, Every has said she questions how he became the chief, coming from the most corrupt police department in the United States, New Orleans. That's her words, not mine. And something else that Kincannon has said, which is, well, I had to do this selection process this way. Noel says he never would have come here if it hadn't been that way. I think she's forgetting that Chattanooga had an open process. He was one of the finalists.
It's worked both ways historically when you look at national models, and who's to say which one's better, but I think this community unfortunately has this long history of things being done in the back room, and this looked like it was done in the back room. Mayor Kincannon's intentions were good, the appearance was poor.
Susan, let's get your take on this, because really it's been a year, but the chief is still getting his footing because the changes he wanted to make have been coming in the last few months.
Right. Yeah, I think the issue of transparency was clearly has dogged the current mayor a little bit. And you know, I go back to initially when we had all these trouble out at Austin East and Anthony Thompson was killed out there. She didn't handle that well. I mean, and I think she got a lot of criticism about that.
What specifically would you say was a concern?
Well, there were so many things happening all in a time period, and I remember that she called a news conference at 9:30 one night and was going to take all the SRO officers out of the schools. Well, that to me was the worst thing you could possibly do. And I've changed her mind about it because she got a lot of criticism about it. But you know, I think the biggest knock has been the transparency in the hiring of Chief Noel. Again, so far he seems to be doing well, but clearly we've had a problem in our city with violence and gun problems and shootings and that sort of thing. And I think anybody that's running for this position has to be aware and better come up with a good plan to work with KPD and you know, have a good relationship there.
John, the mayor and the chief have been quick to point out that at the early part of this year, we did see the number of deadly shootings drop compared to previous
They
years.
did. I've heard that multiple times. I mean, no offense to them, but that's not something that one can just magically control. Let's be honest. I mean, you all know this. You can't just say, we've done these things and now shootings and murders are down. I'm sorry, it doesn't quite work that way. It's an extremely complicated, unique crime.
It's hard to prove a negative as well, as leaders have said, with this violence interruption effort that the mayor has championed and others, that how do you know what would have happened? You can't really say that.
Yeah, it's just, honestly, murder is, everybody focuses on it, understandably, because we lose people in our community when somebody is a victim of a homicide. But it's not something you can just fix. It just doesn't happen.
We're going to have more perspective from the candidates and our panel when we come back on Inside Tennessee.